Let's first get our bearings and location established. And here is the Chippewa River, empties into the Mississippi. Just above here is St. Paul. And then upriver is Eau Claire. Going north on the Red Cedar River, we would run into Dunnville, Downsville, and there's Menominee. And downriver is Durand. You can see a little better here. Here is the Red Cedar River flowing into the Chippewa. Here is the Red Cedar Trail crossing the Chippewa River. Comes from Menominee, and it intersects with the Chippewa River Trail, which starts in Durand and ends, I believe it's going beyond Eau Claire up as far as Cornell.
Hello, my name is Evan Gabriel, and I'm here today with my father, Brian Gabriel, and we are at the Red Cedar Bridge that crosses the Chippewa River, and you're seeing a view from the bank right now before we take off on our historic journey down the river. Today we're in our usual 12-foot john boat with a trolling motor and oars. We're gonna now talk to my dad about what we're gonna be hitting on this journey.
Good morning. Boy, we had a beautiful day to go down the river. This is our second segment of river travel. Our first one was from Caryville to Red Cedar here, and the next one now is going to be from Red Cedar to Durand. This is about a 10-mile stretch. Points of interest along the way will be we'll go under the big Red Cedar Trestle Bridge, which is now part of the Red Cedar Bike Trail, and to the south of us is the Chippewa River State Bike Trail. These all followed the former roadbed of the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Railroad, known also as the Milwaukee Road. Our next point of interest will be where the Red Cedar River joins the Chippewa River. Then it'll be the 9-mile slough, the entrance to the 9-mile slough. And then also will be 9-mile island on our right. Another point that we'll be checking out is the Hubbard's Landing, where canoers can disembark and leave the river. Next to that will be where farmers in the area used to use a ferry to take their cattle across onto 9-Mile Island for pasturage. A little farther down, we will hit the area where Wabeek used to be established. It was a big lumber town at one time. The last will be Bear Creek, where old Durand was first established. And then it'll be on to Durand itself. So we'd just like to show you a little bit of what we have here in our boat. We've got just a real shallow draft boat, because sometimes the river in spots gets really not very deep. And we have a little electric motor to help us down the river. Usually we go with the current, so we don't usually have too much of a problem. So we're ready to go. So follow along as we go down our next segment of journey down the Chippewa River.
Our first stop along our river journey will be Frank Lorshbough's mill, and his mill was established sometime in the late 1800s. We don't know exactly how long it lasted. There's a plat book of 1888 which shows it in existence, but by 1915 it is gone. So, but it's a real interesting place. So we will be following Fall Creek here up to the location. This is the area where the mill was established. There was quite a lake here at one time. A couple years ago, Evan and I we discovered a couple of old foundations, and we're going to take you on a little look-see and show you what we have found. now going to make our way back to the Chippewa River, retracing our steps along the Fall Creek. And there is the Chippewa River flowing through. Fall Creek comes down this way and empties in right there. Good view of it right here. Even has its own little delta. Interesting.
Well, we finally made it on the river, and you can see the trestle. We got pretty good current currently. As my father had said earlier, today now it's the crossing for the Red Cedar State Trail. And this is the Chicago-Milwaukee-St. Paul Railroad would lead up to Menominee. As you can see, there's some pilings from previous bridges. And a lot of old logs and stuff that had been caught from floods. But you can see the bridge is still standing pretty strong through a lot of high water that's come through here.
We launched our boat right from this area here. You can see this white or light area. The road comes right down here. It's a nice spot to take off in your boat. And we proceeded up by the railroad bridge here, or the trail bridge. And now we're going to take time to stop and see a little more of Red Cedar, a little railroad town near here. This was called Red Cedar Junction, and the reason is because you can see here's where the railroad ran through here, or the trail now, state trails, but this is where the train would leave the main track and head north toward Menominee. Just a little bit ahead here is the location of the Red Cedar School. You have a little more information about that. It was right here. Now we're going to head down the road. Not very far. And we will be coming to a little Red Cedar area. And approaching Red Cedar right now. And there it is. Basically, during its heyday, Red Cedar covered this area right in through here, around in here. And over farther to the south is Browning Lake, which is near to the Chippewa River. And so we're going to look into the past a little bit of Red Cedar.
Now, off in this direction is the old, well, what we see ahead is a new house that was built up there 4 or 5 years ago. And on the right-hand side is where Ray and Bessie, or the old building place, used to be. That's all been burned out and rubbed out. That's the corner right there. Out here. out towards Red Cedar. Over to the right, the house you see there is where the old Mishra house used to be. Swing back. Look up the County Line Road, going east. Now back, going towards Red Cedar again. Right in here to the right now is where the old Methodist, Red Cedar Methodist Church was. To the left is Herman Hubbard's old place. Someone's living there, but I don't know who. They've got horses. I don't know who's living there now. Now we get a picture of where those logs and all that junk is, and where Fred Stanton's store was. And coming around is George Schoner's place, where old Louis Chapman lived. Where I'm standing out there is where the old coal shed and the water tower used to be. Stockyards were down behind me. Get another shot of Herman Hubbard's old place. Right in there is where the Holland store used to be. This road leads down to where Paul and Marge Hubbard lived. Coming around to the right again, just north of where I stood where the coal sheds were. Where the railroad station used to be. Another shot, that's where the old Stanton store used to be, the Red Cedar store. A different direction. And then we see where the railroad bed is. Going north towards the Richard Frank place.
finished our visit with historic Red Cedar, and now heading back to the Chippewa River and continuing on with our float journey. Back to the river.
Well, we'll see you on our next stop, which is where the Red Cedar will come into the Chippewa.
Well, we're continuing on downriver from the Red Cedar Bridge, and we'll just look at the bank along here where our next stop will be the Red Cedar River, which should be coming up shortly on our right. You can see there's been some erosion here on this bank here. The river is continually working in changing the channel along here. So we're going to keep our eyes out for the Red Cedar River as it joins the Chippewa.
All right, we are coming up to the previously mentioned Red Cedar River. It's just down from the bridge, just around one bend. And we're going to be able to see it a little bit better here shortly. We're just kind of getting around this little sandbank here. We got to be careful. It is getting shallower here, but you can kind of start to see now the inlet here of the river. It's really hard to see it from this angle, but we're going to get a better view here. During the summer, it looks like green paint going into clear water. The Red Cedar is known for being a colorful river. And you can see this on Google satellite images. It's kind of amazing to see. And you can see it really well now. Right now it's not too bad. There's a little green in the Lake Monoman, which is all hooked up with this, but you can kind of see the water is getting darker and greener as we get up closer to where the river comes in. But that is where the Red Cedar River meets the Chippewa, which eventually the Chippewa River then of course runs into the Mississippi.
After leaving Red Cedar, we're continuing down the Chippewa here and coming around this curve, and we run into the Red Cedar River where it empties into the Chippewa. And now we are going to be heading up the Red Cedar River toward the historic town of Dunnville. And there is Dunnville right there. This is the bridge. Back in the 1800s there were buildings, early 1900s there were buildings on this side of the river, but now they are only found over on the west side. But people still live there. So let's take a historic look at Dunnville. Well, I hope you enjoyed our little trip to Dunnville. A little look into the past. And now we will be heading back again to the Chippewa River. Okay, we're traveling on down the mighty Chippewa River, and I wanted to show you an example of the erosion that's continually going on this river. You'll see here that the bank is pretty raw. Sediments are coming into the river. It's actually even taking the trees out, and the reason is because when the current goes around these outside meanders, it's the strongest and has the most force against the bank. Now, as we look directly across from that situation, we find looks like a big deposit of sediment on a sandbar here. This is kind of typical as you go down the Chippewa River. This part of the river is still fairly narrow and quite deep. So it's the first time we've been down this far, but it's a typical Chippewa River as far as being like it is upstream. So we'll see when it changes as we proceed down.
We were just mentioning the changes of the course of the river and the banks eroding, and we just wanted to show this here too. Real good example of some major erosion. Lots of trees, fresh trees going into the river right as we speak. And it's all around this, kind of to this point where we're gonna be taking a bend and going around. So the current is really coming in here and hitting this bank right now.
Especially during flood time,
Yeah.
the force is just tremendous on these curves, these meanders.
So you can see that this is just some recent erosion with new trees. Even the trees aren't able to hold the bank up because of the force of the water. I'm just gonna shoot all of this here just so we can see. There is a lot of vegetation falling into the river right here. And right now we have a nice little current too. Kind of trying to stay out of the wind and making good time. You can see the good current. We're moving real well right here. We're not even having to row too much here right now. Well, this is just a good example of what is happening all over the river right now. And we're nearing that bend. And then the course of the river will change after we get around the bend. Just saw some really neat wildlife. A couple bald eagles and a nest up there where I'm shooting right now. They just flew off, so hopefully we will run across them here soon. Probably going out for some lunch or something. But they got a nest up here, pretty close to where I'm shooting right now. It's pretty neat to see.
After leaving the Red Cedar River, we're going to be proceeding down the Chippewa until we encounter 9 Mile Island, first of all. And this is 9 Mile Island. This is the beginning of the 9 Mile Slough. Now you can see there's not a lot of room for water to get in here anymore. And you'll see in our video that there's just like a dike has been built in here. Let's zoom out a little bit, see a little bit better. 9 Mile Slough proceeds on the kind of the northeast side of the island here, around here. And then we're going to proceed to the downstream a little farther here, and we will see Hubbard's Landing and the Vredenburg Crossing. We are close to Hubbard's Landing, which is right in this area, and we'll have more information about that. And then just a little farther downstream is the Vredenburg Crossing, where farmers crossed the river to the island and made use of all this land over here. Well, we've just made another curve in the river, and I think we might be coming up to the 9 Mile Slough entrance on 9 Mile Island here on the right. We're going to get in a little closer look here. Okay, we are at the entrance of the 9 Mile Island Slough, and as you can see, it is really blocked. I don't know how water even gets in there anymore. There's also a lot of riprap here.
This looks to be private property.
Okay.
It's posted and they have, looks like a little umbrella there.
Oh yeah. There's quite a bit of riprap along here. As we float by. And so the 9 Mile Slough is just about completely cut off from its source of water. Interesting along here. And so right in front of us is the 9 Mile Island, or the 9 Mile Island State Natural Area. So we will be following along its bank here for a few miles actually. This was where the logs used to be put in this slough channel down to Wabeek, where there was a sawmill. But we are rapidly leaving that now and proceeding on now to Hubbard's Landing. While we're approaching Hubbard's Landing here, we picked up a nice current on this meander. How fast have we been able to go, Evan, sometimes?
We've gotten up about 4.
Sometimes we reach 4 miles an hour. That's just on using the current.
And this is one of the real beautiful spots in the river. And I'm going to show you the geology is a little different up here too, because you'll be seeing some rock formations on the left.
Now we're coming up to this rock formation that my dad had previously talked about. And why we're pointing this out is that if you travel down the Chippewa in the southern Dunn County area, you don't see this. It's a lot of sand, not too much of anything of this kind of rock. So it's just kind of interesting how things have changed right here. You kind of see this a lot on the Red Cedar River especially. But you can see here it's a very nice bank here that will hold up forever. And we'll keep an eye out for any more of these as we continue to kind of chronicle all the changes that the river brings.
Yes, and we have come to Hubbard's Landing. This is a popular takeout point for canoes and boats, maybe. Kayakers even, possibly. So that leads up to County Road M. And it's named after the Hubbards that used to live in this area. Well, this is an access point to the river, is what this is. And as we move downriver, the next item of interest is going to be the area where the Walters and their neighbors used to have a ferry to take their cattle across to 9 Mile Island to pasture. And it was just down this way a little ways, and I'll try to get a little better shot. We are on County Road M in Pepin County along the Chippewa River. And we're looking at the said river. And across is the 9 Mile Island. This is a landing here. It says Hubbard's Landing, donated by Durand Sportsman's Club, Pepin County Land Conservation Department, Pepin County Highway Department, and Department of Natural Resources. So we have looks like a footpath here down to the river. And I'll go down to the bottom and see what kind of a view we have. We are at Hubbard's Landing on the Chippewa River, right off of County Road M, looking downriver. We've had some rain in the last week or so, so the river is running real nice. Across the way is 9 Mile Island.
Well, just across from Hubbard's Landing is 9 Mile Island, and you can see here with the postings and such that this is where the little state the state natural area is. So it's probably pretty wild over there.
It appears that maybe some of this is still private hands. We see a lot of signs. What kind of signs are those, Evan?
They're just posted signs.
Private property signs across the river here. So, but anyway, this is all 9 Mile Island here on our right. We are just downriver from Hubbard's Landing, and it's in this area that the Walters family and other neighbors used to have a ferry, and they would take their cattle across 9 Mile Island to graze during the summer months. This is the spot. It's just off of County Highway M in Pepin County.
And around the corner, can remember the old Redbird landing, the moat landing where a yacht used to catch his fish. Right down over the hill there. Getting closer to the river now, you can see where the boats used to come in. Looking across the Chipway toward the island. There's 9 Mile Island on the other side. Looking down the river from this side. Then we switch. And go up the river, past Hubbard, looking towards the hill. Up there, I don't know whether we can see the bank or not, but where you see those trees is where the old high bank was on the Chipway River. I love those. Yeah. Right in there is where we used to land with the old ferry to haul our cattle in and out. So we're going up the river. You can see this is the upper landing where just below Hubbard's. see the pine trees and the rock a little bit better here.
We are right now on our way to Wabeek, and I thought I had seen a bald eagle flying around and he kind of flew away from us, but we think we found their nest. Here's a close-up of the eagle's nest. Looks like they got a nice little view watching the river all day long.
Well, as we proceed on our way toward Wabeek, we came across quite a stretch of riprapping here on the south shore. It proceeds downriver. And we're heading toward Wabeek. And 9 Mile Island is still here on our right. Well, we've come around this last bend, and lo and behold, we see Wabeek Mound. So we know we're getting very close to the historic lumber town of Wabeek. Should be very close at hand.
Proceeding further down the river, now we have 9 Mile Island on the right. Better view here, 9 Mile Island, and then the 9 Mile Island Slough. As we look at the lower southern end of 9 Mile Island, we'll be able to identify the area where old Wabeek was at one time, was over in this area here. And it also there were the famous Wabeek yellow banks were along here. They've pretty much healed up right now. So this will be our next stop.
Well, we stopped on a little island here and for a little lunch, and guess what we see? Mama and her two fawns, and they see us and into the woods they go, but at least you get to see them for a brief second. Seen a lot of bald eagle, and that's our first deer we've seen today.
And we see a little inlet here along the south bank, and not quite sure what this is, but if it's another creek or not, don't know. There's definitely water back in there. So. Oh yes, definitely. Okay, as we pan toward downriver, and we are approaching Wabeek. Should be up in this bend in the river here. We'll get closer. As we're traveling along 9 Mile Island now, we're coming to the 9 Mile Island Slough, and this is where the loggers had a boom and they would collect logs to run through the Wabeek sawmill. And here we are at Wabeek. The town was up along that far bank, and you can see Wabeek Mound in the background. And there was the location of the historic lumber town of Wabeek. This is the historic 9 Mile Island Slough here, where it comes and enters back into the Chippewa River. Trees and vegetation now, but one time this was a bustling little community. And now we leave 9 Mile Island behind. We are now heading toward Old Durand and the mouth of Bear Creek, where it enters the Chippewa River. Today is November 9th, 2012, and I'm just really glad to be visiting today with Dick and Judy Slusher, who are actually residents of the Wabeek area, which we are going to be talking about today. So Dick and Judy, do you want to tell us a little bit about your books and your sign behind us?
48, we moved here and realized with my parents' help that this was the site of the original Wabeek village, the sawmill, and as especially the Phil Shackle. A steamboat was moored here, and Phil lived in the house briefly that I was raised in, and we've tried to carry bits of this history throughout the years that we've been here. And in the last 30 years have had a really interest in what happened here in the river bottoms that we're going to cover and tour today. In 91 we had Bill Hazer make this sign that covers a few of the major issues of the activities, the mill that went on here.
And we have some books here that are sold at the Pepin County Historical Society, one by Vern Pinskowski and by Don Raymond, and they're about this area, Wabeek Village, and Phil Shekel, who also owned a boat on the river and moved the logs through the river.
So how many years have you owned this property now, Dick? You've been in the family.
I think 50, 64, this property. And we did sell the dairy farm where I was raised in 03. The house that was built for Phil Shackle, his house burned in around 1909, and Adams Elton Company built him a new house. And that was the house that I was raised in. And we tore that down in 1960, my dad and a carpenter, and built the house then that's there now. But and then right in, when I put water pipes in 03, we dug right through the remnants of that house that Phil originally had on the farm. And then he died in 1910. His wife was, I think, around 1907. He only lived a short while after his wife died.
And all the logging was done by them.
Yeah.
So
1897 was the last trip down the Chippewa, went to the Mississippi, and this is unbelievable. That boat went all the way down the Mississippi to the Florida Keys and was used as a freight boat and went through 2 hurricanes before they junked it. And I would have loved to have gotten hold of the anchor, but Mrs. Fred Milliron donated it to the park in Pippin, Wisconsin, right on Highway 35 if you're driving through. And that anchor stands about that big. That boat was 101 feet long and 24 feet wide, and the cylinder, the steam cylinder was 16 feet long. Here, and it's hard to believe as we continue this around the trip down around that this all took place here, because now it's brush, prickly ash, and deer. So.
Well, Dick, we've moved down the road a little bit. Where are we standing now? Or what used to be here? Or?
This was a site of the hotel. They didn't call it hotel. What did they call it? On
Boarding house.
Boarding house.
Boarding house.
And when I was a kid, and up until a few years ago, and I'm still kicking, trying to find the well pipe here. And it's in this general, you know, within 50 feet of here was the well pipe. And like Judy said, Bob Abbott would stand here and talk about the well pipe. There's a picture of him. The St. Paul Pioneer Press guy came down and did a write-up on this. And it was big enough to house 50 people. And that's just unbelievable as you stand here with the brush now, and to think that all that activity was going on here 150 years ago, 160. And the life that was all the immigrants coming here, and they were all immigrants, all coming in from Germany, Austria, and Ireland, and working in the mill and trying to scrape out a living. So it's a bit of history that we try to hold on to.
What do we have next in store for us?
We have a replica of the riverboat, the Phil Shackle, that was made in probably 30 years ago, at least. A fellow in Durand made a replica of the boat, and we'll just take a shot of that. And that's in our hunting cabin over behind us here a bit. And then we'll go out to the river that we call the cross, and take some shots of the piling, the rock, the beaver island that was built, and some big bolts that are still up in the woods, and a lot of brush.
Okay, this is a replica of the Phil Shackle, the boat that he himself ran. And he was here from 1855 on up. It was a very flat-bottomed boat. The bottoms were just flat because it was such a shallow river. And Harold Sly built this as a replica for us several years ago, and so we cherish that because it gives us an idea of what it looked like. Done from a picture taken many years before, when it was still running. So I don't know.
Okay, well, we've left the cabin and now we're heading toward the river, but we've actually come upon the site of the original old town of Wabeek. And it's hard to believe, but this is where it was all platted out and all the blocks and the houses were at one time. As you can see, there's nothing much here now except trees and brush. But we wanted to document this site here, this spot, as the site of the town of Wabeek. Actually on the bank here, looking at 9 Mile Island across the way, and this actually used to be a kind of a major channel for the river, right, Dick? Right here. Now the river switched to the other side of the island, so. But there's still water here, and Dick, you crossed this spot here many times and for many years. Can you just tell us about it?
Yeah, it's probably the local, the point of the whole village and the steamboat landing, which would be behind us right up here in the brush. And then Beaver Island is right back behind us here, which was created by, I'm assuming, Phil Shackle. Shackle had a lot to do with that. And then 9 Mile to our left, and the slough or the backwater of the Chippewa right here. This spot has significance, still a beautiful special spot. We have camping here in the summertime, a lot of ice fishing in the wintertime, and of course I log the land on the island every winter, and a very special spot to our family. A lot of
The water used to go right on through here, island right behind us. And that island, as we moved, when I moved here, when I married Dick, the water went right up through there, and we would come down and play in the water there. And now there's no water all up through there; it's all sand. Things change.
yeah. So
And during the 30s, you said, you talked about 9 Mile Island.
and again, I was born in '44, so I missed all that, thankfully. But there was a barn and some buildings on the upper end of the island, not down here on mine, but mine was still all fenced out there, which is, you know, we fenced down here as a kid, you know, we'd have the mosquitoes and a post hole driver and a chainsaw and some old wire, and away through the woods we go. And I've had, you know, I've lived, you probably have too.
Every year the water would come
comes
up and tear out your
fences. Yeah, and you could build the best fence in the world up on top and it'd stay there. Down here, like Ryan just said, it goes down the river. So, but they had that all fenced out there, and it's hard to believe, but again, in the 30s it was so dry that they probably went to wherever they could get any kind of grass to grow. And there are open meadows out there. You go through this series of woods and what is it, probably 600 feet, and you get big grass areas with no trees growing in. Well, that'd make, you know, if you were hungry and you were a cow, it'd be a good deal. So that was the little that I know about the farming that went on there. No, so.
Are there any private landowners on 9 Mile Island now at this time?
Yeah, I own 208 acres on this south end, and there's a Jim or John Williams that owns on the north end, and he does have a brand new barbed wire going all the way across. He's isolated 20 acres over here to the east of me, and Hubbard's own a little bit. Yeah. So we'd have to look at the plat book, a current one, to see exactly. But it's basically DNR. Slusher and Lumber, before they sold the DNR, they brought all kinds of logs through here. They dropped a skidder in here, and it stayed there all night. They had 2 wreckers and another skidder up there trying to get it out, and they got it out. I'll quit before I drop mine in. You can only guess. But when I was a kid, there was a big log up here, and I assume that's where they tied the boat up. But you can only take a wild guess at what it was.
Yeah, so Gus is showing the rock piling here along the bank, and something to do with Wabeek, we know that for sure. They wouldn't be here otherwise. Dick, what are we looking at over there, do you think, or any
Just
idea?
additional piling, and our idea was that they created this beaver island so that they could get the logs to come off from the channel back in here and hold them in the area that we're standing, because to our left is where we feel, I'm sure the mill was, and this would be just a boom to hold the logs in, and they got it in here. Put the rock in so that it would get built. Because it's always been called Beaver Island, and it was a man-made island ever since I was around.
And now we've come upon another spot that's something to do with the logging activity down here, that's for sure. We've seen a couple of big timbers here that have holes in them, so they may have used it for anchoring. Maybe the boom that used to be here, we're not sure.
largest steam-operated sawmill prior to the Civil War in Wisconsin.
Well, they might have some kind of a winch system to haul logs,
Could be.
and that was anchored so it wouldn't go.
I don't know.
All you can do is speculate at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. And then to have these rocks in here, it's just, you know, it's too bad they can't talk.
Yeah. What a story they could tell. Yeah, Dick, say, what do you think this is? Well, you're standing on and I'm looking at here.
It's just fun to speculate why they would take rock and build an 8-foot little high-rise, and on the other side it's down, what, 20 feet. If that was created by flow of river, why they had the rock here? Did they have it as some kind of a, to do with holding the logs? I've been around a lot of sawmills and they don't usually pile rock up to make a sawmill work. So, and I just found this hunk of iron here, up here, that must have been left. If it could only talk, we would be in business here. But today all I can do is speculate. Why was this here? So,
Well, we're still on Dick Schlosser's land here, and we're looking northeast, kind of toward the south, and looking at 9 Mile Island from the west side. And the channel is right in front of us. There's still some water over here, although not as much as since the channel has changed.
Well, after our nice visit with the Schlossers, we're going to be heading downriver again. This is where 9 Mile Slough rejoins the Chippewa River. And I mentioned previously about the yellow banks along here, and it's actually a term for eroded high banks that are just covered with sand usually. However, these have established quite a bit of vegetation over the years, and it looks pretty stable. This was a source of a lot of the sediment that empties into the Chippewa River. Okay, our next stop will be Bear Creek. There's Bear Creek. We should zoom in on it a little bit better. Here it is right here. Here's where Bear Creek empties into the Chippewa.
You can see some Canadian geese. Found a nice little spot to get a little sunbathe out on the shore. Yeah, there's about 15 out there right now. Some of the shore here with rock.
Trying to hold the banks in.
This goes down for a fairly significant amount of shore here.
We are traveling at about 2 miles an hour with the current, the natural current, but when we have our little motor going, we get up around 4. We haven't seen any pilings yet in the river. There's another bald eagle. And we're heading right for it right now.
We've seen probably nearly a half a dozen bald eagles today, I'd say. There he goes. We got a little too close for comfort, probably.
Well, we're north of Durand, still north of the entrance of Bear Creek to the river, but we see a lot of, we see a lot of riprap here on the north bank. And this looks like it's a little older, but it looks like it's really holding well. The bank looks to be stabilized along this stretch, and it runs for quite a few feet. We're traveling right now at about 2 miles an hour just by using the current. We're actually on the last stretch to Durand. Should be there within an hour. We've also seen quite a few, seen some different eagles, I believe, on this stretch of the river. Along with, and Evan said there were a lot of bald eagles. Yes, we've seen a lot of bald eagles and wildlife. And it seems like the river is getting a little wider now. So we'll take a look. While Evan positions the boat here, we'll take a little look at the river, and it just seems like it's kind of broadening a little bit. The current is still very good down here. There must be a good water flow today. This really aids us in our trip because we have just a little electric motor here, and with a battery, and it doesn't last all that long. So we can use any help we can get. Well, we've come a little farther down the Chippewa River and we're looking for Bear Creek, where it enters the Chippewa. Approaching it right now. And this is the vicinity of old Durand also. A little better view of it. It's bigger than it looks. And you'll see along here more riprap. Extensive riprapping on this lower part of the Chippewa River here toward Durand. They've really stabilized the banks here. And we'll head farther downriver.
Durand actually had its start in this area along the floodplain in the early 1850s, but after about the first flood, I think about 1855, decided it was too low and caused too much havoc with their town, so they moved just a few miles downstream to the present day Durand. But this would have been the area of, they called it Chippewa at the time. Someplace along in this area here. We're now going to head up Bear Creek. And pay a visit to Dorwin's Mill. Very historic spot here in Pepin County. So we're going to follow Bear Creek here. And there is Bear Creek. And it's crossing Highway 85 here. So let's keep following upstream. And you can see the meanders in here. Very beautiful creek. And it makes a left here. And we'll just keep following. And now we are approaching Dorwin's Mill, the site of Dorwin's Mill. And that is right in here. So we'll be taking another little historic glimpse at this site. leaving Dorwin's mill, we'll be proceeding back to the Chippewa River. Again, here's where Bear Creek crosses Highway 85. There is the Chippewa River Trail, the bike trail now, former right-of-way of the railroad. Comes through here. And here we are, back to the Chippewa River. Again, this is where Bear Creek comes into the Chippewa, so now we are going to proceed a little further southwest, and our ending spot, the beautiful little river town of Durand.
Well, we're continuing our final stretch of the river here. We're now below Bear Creek, and we are getting closer and closer to Durand. Making real good time now. I think about right around this bend we should be getting near Durand. Well, we are at last coming up to a sign of civilization. There's a new bridge that crosses the Chippewa River at Durand. And you can see, start seeing some buildings. As we get nearer and nearer here, see the cars going over the bridge. And Durand was built right after Old Durand was ended. Old Durand only lasted about 5 years. In the 50s, 1850s. The current location of Durand was established in the mid-1850s. After the old one was flooded out, they went for higher ground. Durand still has a little flooding issues from time to time, but a lot better than the old location. Next stop is Durand.
We're just outside of Durand here, and I believe we have a turkey vulture over here eating on something on the sandbar. Probably something dead. There he is.
Alright, we are now approaching Durand and going to be going underneath the new bridge. And here. And I'm kind of starting to shoot more into where downtown Durand would be. Durand's a nice little river town to visit. As you can see, we're getting very close to the bridge now. A lot of traffic going over there on this Thursday afternoon. Must be some Veterans Memorial here. Right along the river here. We're going underneath the bridge right now.